We spend so much of our lives looking outward. From the moment we open our eyes in the morning, our attention is drawn to the external world. We instantly check our phones, scanning through updates and notifications, measuring our lives against the carefully curated highlights of strangers and acquaintances. We go to work and spend hours watching the reactions of our colleagues, dissecting the subtle shifts in our manager's tone of voice, and scanning the expressions of our friends during dinner to ensure we are fitting in. We constantly measure ourselves against some invisible, shifting standard of what it means to have it all together. We chase after titles, possessions, and social milestones, operating under the quiet assumption that peace of mind is something to be earned, a prize waiting for us at the end of a long finish line. But when was the last time you truly looked inward, without immediately trying to fix, judge, or alter what you saw? The truth is, most of us are terrified of our own internal stillness. The moment the distractions fade, when the television is turned off, the phone is put away, and the room goes quiet, a wave of unease often washes over us. In that silence, the thoughts we've been running from all day begin to catch up. We face the reality of our doubts, our regrets, and the persistent feeling that we are somehow falling short of who we are supposed to be. To escape this discomfort, we quickly find something else to do, another task to complete, or another problem to solve. We treat our inner world like a chaotic, messy room that we need to keep locked away from public view, avoiding the mirror at all costs because we are afraid of what we might find staring back at us. It's easy to love the version of yourself that wins. It is effortless to feel a sense of warmth and pride toward the version of you that gets the promotion, the version that receives praise from peers, or the version that says the perfect, witty thing in a social setting. We have been conditioned since childhood to tie our self-worth directly to our achievements and public validation. But that kind of conditional affection isn't genuine self-love. It is simply self-congratulation. It is a fragile agreement we make with ourselves that says, "I will accept you only as long as you perform perfectly." But what happens when you fail? What happens when you make a mistake at work, experience an awkward interaction, or find yourself paralyzed by creative block? If your love is entirely dependent on your success, it will vanish the moment you need it most. Genuine self-love isn't a reward for good behavior or flawless execution. It is a foundational, radical practice of meeting yourself exactly where you are right now, in this very room, with all your unfinished projects, your unpolished edges, and your quiet anxieties. It means developing the capacity to look at your flaws, your fears, and your current struggles, not as evidence of failure, but as natural components of a complex, evolving life. Carl Jung famously observed that we cannot change anything until we accept it, noting that condemnation does not liberate, it oppresses. When you spend all your psychological energy fighting against your current reality, you leave yourself with no resources to actually grow. True transformation does not begin when you finally become perfect. It begins the exact moment you stop at war with your own reality and extend compassion to the person you are today. Before we dive deep into how we can practically shift this lifelong relationship with ourselves today, let's set a shared intention together. This isn't just about passive listening. It's about actively choosing a new path forward. If you are tired of the constant internal friction, if you are ready to stop fighting your own mind and start truly understanding your own depth, let's make a commitment right now. Pause for a moment, take a breath, and leave a comment below with this simple affirmation. I am learning to accept every part of who I am. Let those words resonate. Write them out, not as a declaration that you have everything figured out, but as a brave starting point for the rest of this journey today. There's a profound concept inspired by early analytical psychology that suggests we do not merely consist of the conscious, polite identity we present to the world. Beneath the surface of our awareness, we all carry a shadow, a hidden psychological basement where we store the parts of ourselves we deem unacceptable, shameful, or dangerous. From our earliest days, we are taught which traits earn us affection and which ones bring disapproval. To survive and fit into our families, schools, and workplaces, we carefully split ourselves in two. We keep the pleasing, cooperative traits upstairs in the light, while we ruthlessly push our envy, our lingering resentments, our raw ambition, and our deep-seated vulnerabilities downstairs into the dark. We construct a clean, orderly house for the world to see, desperately hoping no one ever opens the door to the cellar. Think about the last time you felt an unexpected flash of bitter envy when a close friend achieved a major life milestone, or that sudden, disproportionate burst of blinding irritation over a minor traffic delay or a misplaced set of keys. Usually, our immediate instinct is to violently push those feelings down, shame ourselves for being so petty, and quickly pretend we are perfectly serene, rational human beings. We tell ourselves, I shouldn't feel this way, or I am a better person than this. But hiding those heavy pieces in the dark does not make them vanish. It simply gives them a strange, autonomous power over us. When you refuse to acknowledge your shadow, it doesn't disappear. Instead, it operates behind the scenes, leaking out sideways as passive-aggressive comments, sudden mood swings, unexplainable self-sabotage, or a persistent, low-grade anxiety that you can never quite shake. Loving yourself like this, truly and deeply, means realizing that those heavy, uncomfortable, and messy emotions are not proof that you are fundamentally flawed or broken. They are simply human signals. They are parts of your psyche that have been exiled and starved of attention, screaming to be heard. When you stop sprinting away from your frustration, your deep sadness, or your jealousy, you can finally pause, sit down with them, and ask them what they are actually trying to protect you from. Often, you will find that your intense irritation with someone else is actually a reflection of a boundary you have failed to set for yourself. Your envy might not be a malicious desire to see someone fail, but rather a misdirected compass pointing directly toward a passion or a dream you have neglected in your own life for far too long. The ultimate goal of this psychological journey isn't to purge the shadow or to eradicate the darker corners of our nature. That is an impossible task that only leads to deeper internal fragmentation. The goal is integration. It is the willingness to look into the basement with an attitude of radical curiosity instead of harsh judgment. Carl Jung pointed out that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. When you bring the shadow into the light of your own awareness, it loses its destructive power. The anger that used to cause you to snap at the people you love transforms into clean, protective boundaries. The fierce ambition you tried to suppress becomes the driving energy you need to pursue your true calling. By accepting the full spectrum of who you are, you stop wasting immense energy fighting yourself, and you finally become whole. Think about the sheer amount of mental and emotional energy it takes to maintain your daily persona. From the moment we step outside our front doors, and often even within our own homes, we wear different masks tailored for different crowds. We have a specific mask for the office, designed to make us look hyper-competent, unflappable, and entirely secure in our career path. We have another mask for our social circles, built to project an image of someone who is always fun, always supportive, and completely free of heavy burdens. There is the always positive mask that forces a smile when we are internally crumbling, the completely independent mask that rejects support to avoid looking weak, and the I don't need anyone's help mask that treats vulnerability like a dangerous liability. We partition our identity into these socially acceptable fragments, desperately trying to remember which version of ourselves we promised to be for each person we meet. You might find yourself arriving home at the very end of the day feeling utterly shattered, sinking into a chair with a profound sense of fatigue that sleep cannot seem to fix. This isn't just physical tiredness from a long commute or a demanding schedule. It is the deep, existential exhaustion of the mental gymnastics required to keep that elaborate performance alive. It takes an immense amount of internal fuel to constantly police your words, edit your expressions, suppress your true reactions, and monitor how everyone else is perceiving you. We live in constant fear that if we let our guard down for even a single second, the mask will slip, and people will see the messy, uncertain, and unpolished reality underneath. We mistake the applause our mask receives for genuine love, forgetting that the persona is just a costume we put on to protect ourselves from the pain of rejection. When you love yourself deeply, you start giving yourself permission to drop the act. You begin to realize that the world will not fall apart if you admit you are tired, or if you confess to a friend that you don't have all the answers to your current life dilemmas. The mask is a transaction. It is what we use to buy temporary approval, conformity, and conditional validation from people who only know our surface. But authenticity is the only currency that buys true, lasting internal peace. True self-love means recognizing that your worth is not tied to how perfectly you perform your role. It is the quiet courage to say, "This is where I am today. I am overwhelmed. I am uncertain." And that is completely allowed. When you stop forcing yourself to be the flawless character you created for public consumption, you finally free up the energy required to heal, grow, and live. Dropping the mask doesn't mean becoming reckless or completely ignoring social courtesies. It means closing the massive gap between who you are on the inside and what you project on the outside. It is the willingness to be seen in your true dimensions, without the defensive armor of perfectionism. When you stop hiding behind a curated identity, a remarkable shift happens in your relationships. You give the people around you permission to drop their masks too. The exhausting game of mutual pretense ends, making room for genuine connection, deep relief, and real understanding. Today, notice which mask you wear most frequently, and ask yourself what you are afraid would happen if you laid it down. The version of you that exists beneath the performance is the only one truly capable of experiencing peace, and that version is already entirely enough. We live in a culture obsessed with optimization. We are bombarded with messages telling us to optimize our mornings, our diets, our careers, and even our relaxation time. From articles promising the ultimate productivity routine to social media feeds showcasing perfectly organized spaces and seamless lifestyles. We are constantly fed the illusion that a flawless life is not only possible, but is the baseline expectation for a successful human being. This creates a subtle, toxic narrative that runs in the background of our minds. The idea that you are a project that needs to be constantly managed, upgraded, and corrected. We begin to view ourselves not as living beings, but as pieces of software that require continuous debugging, operating under the assumption that if we just try a little harder, read one more book, or adopt one more habit, we will finally reach a state of permanent completion where we no longer feel doubt, fatigue, or inadequacy. Let's challenge that fiction today. What if you aren't a broken machine that needs fixing? What if you are simply a human being experiencing a complex, unpredictable world? When you step back and look at the sheer amount of pressure you place on yourself to maintain this illusion of perfection, you realize how exhausting it is to constantly treat your own nature as an adversary. When you shift your perspective from "how do I fix myself" to "how do I support myself," everything changes. You stop viewing your mistakes as evidence of structural failure and start viewing them as standard, expected data points in a normal human life. A bad day, an emotional setback, or a moment of confusion is no longer a crisis that proves you are doing life wrong. It is simply part of the natural weather pattern of human existence. This obsession with a flawless life forces us to view our vulnerabilities as defects. If we feel anxious, we judge ourselves for not being calm enough. If we feel unmotivated, we scold ourselves for lacking discipline. We layer judgment on top of our pain, effectively punishing ourselves for having a normal human reaction to stress, grief, or fatigue. True self-love requires us to dismantle this rigid, industrial view of our worth. It demands that we grant ourselves the grace to be messy, unfinished, and in progress. The expectation of a life without friction is a trap that keeps us perpetually dissatisfied, ensuring that we can never appreciate the present moment because we are always measuring it against an impossible, sterile ideal of how things should be. When you abandon the fiction of the flawless life, you unlock a profound sense of relief. You give yourself permission to exist in the gray areas of life, where answers aren't always clear and progress isn't always linear. You realize that a meaningful life is not one that is devoid of hardship, mistakes, or confusion, but one where those experiences are met with kindness and understanding. You stop waiting for some distant day when you will finally have everything perfectly figured out to start enjoying your existence. By accepting that life is inherently imperfect, you can finally stop managing yourself like a corporation and start living like a human being, finding peace exactly where you are today, right in the middle of your beautiful, unpolished reality. Imagine a massive, intricate mosaic stretching across a stone wall. If you walk up close and focus entirely on a single broken piece of dark, jagged tile, it might seem ugly, sharp, or completely out of place. You might wonder why the artist chose to include something so fractured and dim. But when you take a few steps back and view the entire, sweeping image, you suddenly realize that the dark tile provides the essential contrast necessary to make the whole picture beautiful. Without those deep, shadowed pieces, the bright and vibrant tiles would look washed out, flat, and devoid of any real depth. The beauty of the mosaic doesn't exist despite the broken pieces. It exists precisely because they are woven into the larger design. True self-love is an act of psychological integration. It is the conscious, deliberate decision to step back from the micro details of your daily failures and look at the entire landscape of your life. It means looking at your past mistakes, your awkward phases, your moments of profound weakness, and your brightest achievements, and saying with absolute certainty, all of this belongs to my story. Most of us spend an incredible amount of mental energy trying to smash the parts of our history that we dislike. We want to delete the chapters where we were desperate for approval, the relationships where we stayed too long, or the times we failed to stand up for ourselves. We treat our past like a resume that needs to be heavily edited and sanitized before it can be presented to the world. But you cannot heal by cutting away parts of your own biography. When you deny a piece of your past, you leave a hole in your present foundation. You don't have to erase your difficult chapters to love the book you are currently writing. You just have to acknowledge that those chapters helped shape the person standing here today. Think of the resilience you possess right now. That strength wasn't born in a vacuum. It was forged in the exact moments when you felt completely overwhelmed and somehow found a way to survive. The sensitivity and empathy you offer to others today were likely born from the seasons when you felt completely misunderstood and unseen. Every single fragment of your journey, no matter how painful or embarrassing it might feel in isolation, holds a piece of your hidden power. When you practice integration, you stop dividing your life into good years and bad years, or successful versions of yourself and failures. You begin to understand that growth is a cyclical process, not a straight ascending line. You recognize that the version of you that made poor choices 5 years ago was simply operating with the limited tools, awareness, and emotional resources they had at the time. By extending compassion backward in time to that younger, struggling version of yourself, you bridge the internal divide. You bring that isolated, lonely part of your psyche back into the warmth of the present moment. You are a living tapestry woven from threads of triumph, grief, confusion, and clarity. By accepting the full picture, you cease being a collection of scattered, warring fragments, and finally allow yourself to become a complete, unified whole. To practice this deeply grounded self-acceptance today, we have to move past comforting philosophies and get incredibly practical. It requires us to develop a daily tool that allows us to see ourselves clearly without the distorting lens of self-punishment. Think about a recent situation in your life where you felt like you fell completely short. Maybe you lost your temper and snapped at a family member after a long day. Maybe you missed an important deadline you set for yourself on a personal project. Or perhaps you stayed silent during a meeting when you knew you should have spoken up. In these moments, our default setting is to instantly launch into a brutal internal trial where we act as the prosecutor, the judge, and the executioner, buried beneath a mountain of self-inflicted shame. Instead of diving headfirst into that usual, exhausting spiral of self-criticism, try taking a radically honest, completely neutral inventory of the event. Imagine you are an objective third-party observer, or a scientist looking at data through a microscope. Your job is simply to map the reality of what occurred, stripping away the dramatic, emotional narratives that your inner critic loves to attach to your actions. There is a massive, life-altering difference between healthy guilt and toxic shame. Healthy guilt says, "I made an error, and I need to correct it." It focuses on behavior and leaves room for growth. Toxic shame, however, attaches itself directly to your identity, whispering, "I made an error because I am an inherently flawed, bad, and worthless person." Let's look at how we can practically reframe this inside your mind. Instead of letting your thoughts spiral out of control and saying, "I messed up that presentation because I'm an irresponsible, incompetent person who will never succeed," force yourself to step back and look at the objective facts. Try saying, "I missed that deadline because I took on too much work this week. I didn't schedule my time realistically, and I need to adjust my workload moving forward. Notice how the first statement leaves you feeling paralyzed, defeated, and trapped in a victim mindset. The second statement, however, strips away the cruel insults and focuses entirely on the practical mechanics of the situation. It transforms a perceived character flaw into a manageable logistical problem. This practice of radically honest inventory doesn't mean making convenient excuses for bad behavior or lowering your standards so you never have to try. It means establishing a clear-eyed relationship with reality so you can actually implement meaningful change. When you stop wasting your finite emotional energy defending yourself against your own harsh internal insults, you suddenly free up a massive amount of mental clarity. You shift from a place of helpless, frozen shame into a place of constructive, grounded power. You can look at your life choices, your daily habits, and your mistakes with absolute honesty, making adjustments not out of hatred for who you were yesterday, but out of genuine respect and care for the person you are becoming tomorrow. Have you ever met someone and instantly, almost unconsciously, put them on a massive pedestal? Perhaps it is a colleague at work who speaks with effortless authority, a creative individual whose output seems entirely uninhibited, or a friend who navigates tense social dynamics with an admirable, unshakable calm. You watch them move through the world, and you find yourself thinking with a heavy sigh, I wish I possessed even a single ounce of their natural confidence, talent, or ease. In those moments, you feel remarkably small, operating under the painful assumption that some people are simply born with a special brilliance that was completely denied to you. You relegate yourself to the role of a passive spectator, admiring from afar what you believe you can never truly possess. But psychology reveals a fascinating, liberating truth about these intense dynamics. We frequently project our own hidden strengths, unexpressed talents, and dormant power directly onto other people. When we have spent years burying our own potential, perhaps because we were told as children not to stand out, or because we became terrified of failure, that gold doesn't simply vanish from our psyche. It remains hidden within us, waiting for an outlet. Because our conscious mind refuses to recognize this internal strength, we look out into the world and see it brilliantly illuminated in someone else. The intense, almost magnetic admiration you feel for another person's specific traits is often not a map of what you lack, but a profound psychological echo of what is currently waking up inside of you. Think of it as a subconscious recognition. You cannot truly perceive, resonate with, or deeply admire a quality in someone else unless the blueprint of that exact quality already exists firmly within your own psychological makeup. You recognize their confidence because you possess an untapped reservoir of confidence that is desperate to be expressed. You are drawn to their creativity because your own unique, creative voice is tired of being ignored and locked away. The person on the pedestal isn't holding up a mirror to show you your deficiencies. They are holding up a vivid, living mirror to show you your own hidden, unpolished potential. When you understand this, your envy and your feelings of inadequacy begin to dissolve, transforming into a map of your own future growth. The practice of deep self-love requires you to actively reclaim this projected power. The next time you find yourself swept up in intense admiration for someone else's traits, stop using that observation as a stick to beat yourself with. Pause, take a breath, and consciously shift your internal narrative. Ask yourself, what specific energy am I seeing in them that I am currently denying to myself? Strip away the illusion that the quality belongs exclusively to them. Acknowledge that the warmth, the strength, or the clarity you perceive is a direct signal from your own inner self, reminding you of what you are capable of developing. By pulling your projections back into your own life, you stop worshiping the strength of others and finally begin the brave, rewarding work of embodying your own sovereign power. We talk an immense amount in our modern culture about the vital importance of setting boundaries with other people. We read books, watch tutorials, and practice scripts on how to say no to extra workloads at the office, how to walk away from demanding or unreciprocal relationships, and how to protect our physical time and space from external demands. We recognize that without these external walls, our energy will be completely depleted by the world around us. But we often completely ignore the most critical, high-stakes boundaries of all, the internal ones we must establish with our own running commentary. We build a fortress to keep the outside world from mistreating us, while completely ignoring the fact that the most hostile force in our lives is currently residing right between our own ears. Think about it with radical honesty. If a close friend, a coworker, or even a complete stranger came into your home, sat down comfortably on your couch, and spoke to you the way your inner critic speaks to you during a difficult day, you would not tolerate it for a single split second. You would instantly protect yourself, stand up, and ask them to leave your home immediately. Yet, when it comes to our own minds, we routinely allow that internal voice to run completely rampant. We sit passively and listen for hours as it calls us insult, brings up embarrassing mistakes we made a decade ago, belittles our appearance, and confidently predicts absolute worst-case scenarios for our future. We accept this internal cruelty as if it is objective truth, completely forgetting that we have the right and the absolute duty to police our own mental space. Loving yourself at this deep level means stepping in as your own internal sovereign and fierce protector. It requires you to realize that you are not the voice in your head. You are the one who hears it. You are the consciousness that observes the thoughts, which means you possess the ultimate authority to decide which thoughts are allowed to stay and which ones must be evicted. Setting an internal boundary means noticing the exact moment your mind begins to spiral into self-punishment and actively intervening. It is the practice of stepping into the arena of your own mind, looking directly at that harsh inner critic, and saying firmly, "Thank you for trying to keep me safe from failure by pointing out every flaw, but I am no longer going to allow you to speak to me that way." This is not about forced, artificial positivity or pretending that you never make mistakes. It is about establishing a basic standard of human decency for how you treat yourself. When you establish a firm boundary within, you stop letting fear and insecurity run the entire show. You begin to question the validity of your self-critical thoughts instead of blindly believing them. You realize that just because a thought pops into your head doesn't mean it deserves a permanent seat at the table. By drawing a sharp, uncompromising line against your own self-destructive dialogue, you create a safe, supportive, internal environment. You build a mind that is no longer a hostile battleground, but a calm, resilient sanctuary where you can finally stand corner for yourself and face the external world with genuine, unshakable confidence. So, what actually happens when you start practicing this kind of grounded, radical self-acceptance on a daily basis? What changes when you finally decide to lay down your weapons and stop the endless internal warfare? The truth is, the external world around you doesn't magically transform overnight. Your demanding workload doesn't suddenly disappear. Difficult people don't suddenly become entirely reasonable. And the unpredictable, chaotic nature of daily life remains exactly as it was before. But while the external landscape stays the same, your internal architecture undergoes a massive, revolutionary shift. The way you process stress, face adversity, and interact with the world around you alters so profoundly that it feels as though you have stepped into an entirely different reality. Suddenly, a sharp criticism or an indifferent comment from a manager or a colleague doesn't possess the power to ruin your entire weekend. In the past, a single negative piece of feedback would trigger a massive psychological crisis, sending you into a spiral of panic as you questioned your competence, your job security, and your fundamental worth. But when you are grounded in self-acceptance, your value is no longer up for public debate. You can look at the criticism objectively, extract whatever practical data is useful for your growth, and leave the emotional weight behind. Your worth is firmly tied to your own internal sovereign recognition, not to the fluctuating moods, opinions, or validation of the people around you. You stop treating other people's approval as oxygen, realizing you can breathe perfectly well on your own. A rejection or a disappointment in your personal life will still hurt, because being integrated and self-aware doesn't make you an unfeeling stone. But it will no longer break you. You will feel the natural sting of grief or sadness, but you won't allow that pain to warp into a definitive statement about your value as a human being. You no longer tell yourself the toxic lie that you were rejected because you are fundamentally unlovable or inadequate. Instead, you hold yourself steady through the emotional storm, knowing that you are still completely whole, intact, and worthy of respect, regardless of the outcome. You stop desperately looking to the outside world to fill an internal void, because you have finally taken on the responsibility of supplying that care, validation, and stability to yourself from within. This internal shift brings a remarkable, deep sense of stillness into your daily existence. You become noticeably steadier, calmer, and remarkably resilient in the face of life's inevitable challenges. because you are no longer wasting an immense amount of psychological fuel on managing an artificial persona, policing your thoughts, or hiding your shadow. You suddenly have a vast reservoir of energy available to actually live your life. You move through the world with a quiet, unshakable confidence that doesn't need to shout or prove itself to anyone. You find that you are more present in your conversations, more creative in your pursuits, and significantly more compassionate toward the struggles of others. By shifting your relationship with yourself, you move from a state of perpetual survival and defense into a state of true personal freedom. You do not need to wait for a major life transition, a new calendar year, a perfect shift in your external circumstances, or a moment of absolute clarity to begin practicing this. You do not need to check into a retreat, buy a library of self-help books, or completely dismantle your current routine to experience a deeper sense of internal peace. The invitation to practice grounded, radical self-acceptance is always available to you. And you can start right now, in the very next 5 minutes of your life. This journey is not built on massive, dramatic milestones that happen once a year. It is forged in the quiet, microscopic choices you make when no one else is watching, right in the middle of your ordinary, messy, and beautifully complicated day. The next time you make a minor mistake, whether it is dropping a glass in the kitchen, forgetting a crucial item on your grocery list, stumbling over your words during a phone call, or missing a turn while driving, catch yourself in the act. Pay close attention to the immediate, automated response that rises up from your subconscious. For most of us, that response is a quick, sharp insult, a wave of intense frustration, or a heavy sigh of self-disappointment. In that exact micro moment, choose to intervene. Take a single deep breath. Refuse the familiar urge to insult your intelligence or your character, and actively choose understanding instead. Say to yourself, I dropped a glass because I am rushed and tired, and that is a perfectly normal thing to happen. This is a daily, moment-by-moment practice of micro-adjustments. It is the willingness to catch yourself when you are diving down the old, comfortable pathways of self-punishment and choosing to build a new road instead. Think of it as a form of emotional rehabilitation. Every single time you choose neutrality over judgment, every single time you extend a quiet word of support to yourself after a setback, and every single time you allow yourself to be tired without calling yourself lazy, you are rewiring your relationship with your own mind. You are proving to your subconscious that you are finally a safe person to live with, and that your internal space is no longer a hostile territory where errors are met with cruelty. By accepting the full, unvarnished reality of exactly who and where you are today, you finally unlock the true freedom to grow into who you want to be tomorrow. Growth cannot happen in an environment of constant shame and condemnation. It requires the stable, fertile ground of self-compassion to take root. You do not have to be perfect to be worthy of your own respect, and you do not have to have your entire life figured out to lay down your weapons and stop the internal war. Your life is happening right now, in this very moment, not after you fix your flaws or achieve your next milestone. Take that first, brave step today. Choose to stand in your own corner. Treat yourself with the basic dignity you so freely offer to others, and watch how your world begins to transform from the inside out. We often treat personal transformation as a story with a definitive ending. We like to imagine that there is a specific destination, a peak we will eventually climb, a breakthrough we will finally experience, or a level of maturity we will reach, where the internal friction permanently ceases. We comfort ourselves with the fantasy that one day we will wake up and find that the inner critic has been entirely silenced. The shadow has been completely dissolved, and the temptation to wear a mask has vanished forever. We want a clean, cinematic resolution where the credits roll and we walk off into a sunset of flawless, unshakable self-love. But if you view this psychological journey as a race with a final finish line, you will inevitably find yourself deeply frustrated, because human nature does not operate in straight, predictable lines. The reality of psychological integration is that it is a lifelong, continuous process. It is a spiral, not a staircase. As you move forward in life, you will frequently find yourself circling back to the exact same vulnerabilities, fears, and insecurities that you thought you had outgrown years ago. You might experience a massive setback at work, a painful shift in a personal relationship, or a prolonged season of fatigue, and suddenly realize that the old, harsh voice of self-criticism has returned with an intensity that surprises you. In those moments, it is incredibly easy to fall into despair and think, I haven't made any progress at all. I am right back where I started. But that is an illusion. You are not back at the beginning. You are meeting an old, familiar challenge with a completely new level of awareness, strength, and capacity. Progress doesn't mean the total absence of difficult emotions, nor does it mean that you will never make another mistake or feel the urge to hide behind a mask. Progress means that the time between the moment you stumble and the moment you extend compassion to yourself becomes shorter. In the past, a minor failure or a wave of intense anxiety might have sent you into a dark, paralyzing spiral that ruined your outlook for weeks. Today, through the conscious practice of self-acceptance, you might catch that spiral within a few hours or even a few minutes. You notice the internal storm. You acknowledge its presence without judging yourself for feeling it, and you steady your own foundation. The storm still passes through, but it no longer possesses the power to tear down the entire house you have built. This continuous journey demands that we abandon the need for a polished, static identity and instead learn to love ourselves as a dynamic, unfolding process. You are an ecosystem, not a manufacturing plant. An ecosystem has seasons of vibrant growth, seasons of intense storms, and essential seasons of winter, where everything appears cold, stagnant, and dead on the surface, while vital renewal is happening quietly beneath the soil. When you treat yourself like an ecosystem, you stop demanding that you produce fruit all year round. You learn to honor your periods of exhaustion and uncertainty just as much as you celebrate your periods of high energy and visible achievement. You realize that your value does not fluctuate based on the season you are currently experiencing. As you step away from these ideas today and return to the fast-paced, demanding flow of your daily life, carry this fundamental truth with you. The relationship you have with yourself is the absolute blueprint for every other relationship you will ever experience. How you treat your own flaws dictates how much grace you can offer to the flaws of the people around you. How deeply you accept your own hidden shadow determines how safely you can connect with the vulnerability of others. When you stop demanding perfection from yourself, you automatically stop demanding it from the world. And an immense, liberating wave of peace begins to radiate outward into your home, your workplace, and your community. You become a steadying force in a chaotic world, not because you have a perfect life, but because you possess an unbreakable relationship with reality. There is no grand, final ritual required to seal this understanding. There is only the quiet, ongoing commitment to remain awake to your own internal life. The next time the world applies immense pressure on you to conform, perform, or optimize your existence into something sterile and flawless, remember the mirror, the shadow, and the mask. Remember that you do not owe the world a flawless performance. You owe yourself an authentic life. Trust the process of your own unfolding history. Hold your boundaries firmly within, and continue to reclaim the immense power that has always belonged to you. The path of self-acceptance is open to you in every single moment, with every breath you take, and with every choice you make to treat yourself with basic human dignity.